All right, thank you, Bruno Latour. It's an honor and pleasure to be here, and I'm very sorry, again, I don't speak French, so you have to bear with me speaking English. And yes, we have this cooperation, in fact, with SciencesPo for the World Information City Conference, and I think it was just mentioned earlier, Colorado will be part of that program on Saturday on questions of mobility. And I'm not gonna try to explain everything about World Information City. I hope I can get you interested to come there and find out for yourself. If you don't have time, there will be an archive and streaming and everything. First, a slide from my sponsors. In these times, you always need a sponsor, right? The Global Security Alliance, they are in the business that is one of the few remaining boom industries, this culture, the security industry, of course. One of their products is to actually paint psychogeographical black helicopters in the cities. But I would like to talk about World Information Org just briefly for a few minutes and the related concepts. Our organization started in the World Information Org in the year 2000. The Institute for New Cultural Technologies actually came into existence in the early 90s. It was probably one of the very first servers for radical cultural theory and practice on the internet. Those were the days when you didn't need a search engine to find websites because you were actually finding them by heart. This is some of the publications we were involved with it quite a bit on print material on the politics of the infosphere. Some of these are newspapers that have been produced on a large scale, like a print run of 20,000 or more. They were distributed at events like World Information City or, for instance, at summits of the World Society, the World Summit of Information Society, of the United Nations in Geneva and Tunis and other opportunities. The background really is that we were looking into the question of, with the rise of business, economic, state, intelligence, and this kind of information age industry of professional dealing with information, we were asking who is actually, looking professionally into these issues on an independent cultural level. And so the background idea was to think of models for cultural intelligence or cultural intelligence agencies. And some of the issues that we picked out to look into was, for instance, the question of digital human rights. So human rights in the information age and what that means. One issue that we identified was the question of future heritage, or save the future heritage, meaning that we want to look into questions of how cultural or artistic practice is being changed and modified through technology. Last but not least, we were interested in the question of digital ecology. So if we're thinking about sustainable information landscapes, we are not necessarily talking about, your rural agricultural landscapes, but obviously we're talking about urban information landscapes. And one of the projects we did earlier on this question of the city and how cities are influenced through informational immaterial regimes was focusing a lot on the question of intellectual property and the control of the idea space, let's put it that way. Actually, we were moving away a little bit from, the sort of classical issues of control society and surveillance to the question of how the control of ideas and how the control of sharing and distribution of ideas affects material urban situations. We're, as you can probably already tell, we're not so much only interested in the technology itself, but much more so on what are its effects on the social, on the psychological, and on the cultural level. And You can see here some of the issues that we've been dealing with. For some of you, I brought a few copies that are lying here to have a look at. It has a, there were different issues. This is like the Indian version, whatever. So you can see we were, at that time we were not just doing a conference, but actually also what we many times do, large exhibitions, or in this case, particularly interventions into the city itself. So it's like small images, but the whole city was full of billboards or murals, like paintings on the wall. You can see them partly here. Some paintings were done with flowers, actually. And raising the other were rickshaws, driving through the city with a big sign on them asking, who owns your knowledge? So we're trying to drive the debate on various levels and on different levels of understanding. And obviously this is, a view into some of the other exhibition type of installations that we did in Amsterdam, in Brussels, in Vienna, and other cities, which also touches on the subject of biotechnology and sort of the fusion of flesh and machine. Some of the people that we were glad to be able to welcome for our conferences. On the very left, you see Saskia Sassen. She will be also on the conference just this Saturday. We also have a publication series in German running at the moment. This book here is just from last year. It says in German, battle zones in art and media. And so you get the idea that we're interested in the conflict zones of the infosphere. Just recently, and this will be presented in a few weeks, it's a book called, translated, The Phantom of the Cultural City, and it tries to, sort of look a little bit into the myth of the creative cities, of the creative class, of the creative industries. Certainly, the ideas of, supposedly legendary ideas, how, according to Richard Florida and others, these new forms of immaterial networked employment would have an effect